Okay. Welcome, Rambam. We conclude today the laws of Eruv, which means it's a rabbinic law of allowing from in either private domains that are belonging to several people or a rabbinic law. There's a biblical law of tchum, which means how far you can go outside of city limits. Biblical law is like 12 miles or 12 kilometers. I think it may be 12 kilometers. Rabbinic law is only 2,000 amas, which is about 3,500 feet outside of the city limits. City limits, we learned with that, also with housing, how far, outside of the village, there was another house that, can connect, that can still be considered within what we call city limits, I guess, right?
That was one private domain to another private domain.
That was one type. Today we're going to learn. Today that was one about going from private domain to private domain, right? That's Erev Chatzeros, having the courtyard, like you have a common courtyard.
Yeah.
So can you share that courtyard on Shabbos? Can I bring from my house to your house because we share courtyards? Biblically, you could because it's all private domain, right? Rabbinically, not. Okay. But today we're not going to learn that. Today we're going to learn about going outside of the city limits. And how is it that you can go outside of city limits in a permissible manner? Let's say, well, we're going to give let's say you have to go for a mitzvah, and it's for a mitzvah. So the concept is over here. If I create my place of dwelling before Shabbos outside of the city limits, remember, outside city limits, I have 2,000 amas, right? So let's say he's going to give examples. I put it because I have to go for a bris tomorrow, and the bris is beyond the 2,000, or I have to go visit someone that's sick tomorrow, but beyond the 2,000. So if I set a place beyond outside of the city limits as my residence with food, and consider that my residence, right? Then that becomes the point where I can go from there 2,000. That's the basic idea that we're going to be dealing with. Okay? Now, you can only do that for mitzvah purposes, right? Because remember, this is all rabbinic law. So the same rabbis that said you can't go 2,000 give you permission to go 2,000 for a mitzvah, right? And there's a lot of parameters to that. Okay, chapter 6. A person who leaves city on Friday afternoon and deposits food for 2 meals at a distance from the city, but within the Sabbath limits, right? Within the 2,000, but beyond. But you're going to give examples. And by doing so, establishes that as his place for Shabbos, it is considered as if that's his base. His Shabbos, it is a place where he deposits the food for the 2 meals. Even if he returns to the city before the commencement of Shabbos and spends the night in his home, this is called Erev Tchumim. Right? Tchum means border, boundary, right? The 2,000 boundary, right? But this is Eruv means, right, to come together, right? Because he brought the food and came together in another place. In other words, Eruv was mixture, coming together of bringing different things together, right? That was for people in the same courtyard coming together and bringing food. So therefore, they're considered as one entity, one domain, right? So, but here it's a different concept because it's about this person who's got to go do a mitzvah on Shabbos, right? And in order to be able to do that, Rambam will tell us later, it's only for the sake of a mitzvah, right?
So this is outside of the city, but within the 2,000 amos.
Right. Which then will give me the capability that I can get to my destination, right? Assuming that, well, that's the assumption over here, right? place I need to go is 3,000 amos. I can't go there on Shabbos. But if I made at the 1,500 point, from that 1,500 point, which is within the 2,000, is my place of residence, even though I didn't sleep there, but I put food there,
Yeah.
right? So now I can go from the 1,500 another 2,000. That's the concept.
Got it.
Okay?
It's like an extension.
Exactly. Number two, on the following day, the person, so now, remember, he didn't sleep there Friday night,
No, just food.
right? And he went, he has his family, so he slept with his, and I made Friday night with his family.
Yeah.
But he has to go, whether it's a bris, whether it's a visit the sick, whatever. Rambam's going to speak about it later, right? For sake of a mitzvah.
Mhm.
So on the following day, the person may walk 2,000 cubits from the place of the Eruv in all directions.
Yeah.
Accordingly, when a person walks 2,000 cubits from the Eruv on the following day within his city, he may walk only to the end of his limit. If, however, the entire city is included within his limit, the city is considered as if there were only 4 cubits and may continue to the end of his limit beyond the city. So
I thought the limit was based on that, like leaving from the city.
that's in one direction. How about the other directions? What happens with the other directions now? That's the issue over here. Something happened, whatever, something happened. An urgency came up and now he has to go in another direction. Right? How far can he go in the other directions? That's the issue.
I thought it was just if you were in the city from any direction, you could go 2,000. You could go north 2,000.
Yes, but not now. Because now you made your habitation elsewhere.
Okay.
If your habitation was outside of the city, that's the issue over here.
Oh, because then okay.
If I didn't do this,
Yeah.
my habitation is in the city. So then you're right. From
Yeah.
the city, I'm in the city. So in
Yeah.
the city, I can go 2,000 any
Yeah, yeah.
direction, but not now.
Now you're constrained.
Now I'm constrained because that's not my place of habitation.
Okay.
I've designated my habitation because I put food there,
Yeah.
right? I placed it elsewhere. So now
Now you
that
go
becomes
more
a
direction.
constrict. So that allows me to go elsewhere, but that
Doesn't
restricts me in other
Yeah.
directions.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. Right. So remember, so now he placed it elsewhere. So he can only go as far in his city as 2,000 would be
Yeah.
because he's not in the city.
Yeah.
So that's not his reference point.
Yeah.
So his reference point is there. So he can go 2,000 from there anywhere in his city.
Yeah.
Okay. But if the entire city is, if however, the entire city is included in his limit, let's say he only went out 200
Yeah.
and the whole city is only 1,500.
Yeah.
So it's
Within
the
the
entire city is included, right?
Mhm.
Then the entire city is only considered 4 cubits. And then he can continue to the end of his limit beyond the city in the other direction.
4 cubits.
No, 4 minus 2,000.
Okay, so like 1,996.
What is implied? Okay, when a person places an area of 1,000 cubits to the east of his house in a city, right, he may walk 2,000 eastward from the place where the Eruv, his Eruv, on the following day, right? That we know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's clear, right? He may also walk 2,000 cubits to the west, 1,000 from the Eruv to his house, right? The Eruv meaning outside the city,
Yeah, to go back
which is
to the
out, which
city.
is right, 1,000, and 1,000 from his house westward. He may not walk to the end of the city limits if they are beyond the 2,000 cubits, the
Yeah.
1,000 cubits.
So the city, beyond the city limits, okay.
No, he can't even go within the
Within the
city
yeah.
more than the 1,000
Like if his
because he
house-
went 1,000 beyond.
Yeah.
So now he can only go in this direction.
Yeah.
So now his home is over here. He can only go 1,000 from this direction from his home.
So even if that falls within the city, the 1,000 that way.
But that's if that's what, let's say the city's bigger than 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. Then he can't go
Right.
beyond.
Then he
that.
can't go beyond it.
So he could be constrained of how far he could go within the city.
Yeah. If there's less than 1,000 cubits from his house to the border of the city, even if his Sabbath limits ends 1 cubit outside of the city, the entire city is considered to be 4 cubits and may proceed 996 beyond it to complete the Sabbath limits in 2,000. So he's got a place 1,000 beyond. The city is only 500.
Yeah.
So now the city is only considered 4 cubits,
Mhm.
right? 4 cubits is what we call like the space of a person.
Mhm.
4 cubits is what you get buried in.
Mhm. Okay.
Right. So so now the city's considered 4 cubits, and therefore on the west side he can go 996. On the east side he can go 1,000 plus 2,000.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wait, so it's like once he gets into
This is called new math.
so let's say he's out here 1,000, the city's here, and then so then he can come back 1,000, obviously, and then he still has another 1,000 to go. But the city itself is only considered 4 cubits.
Only if the city ends within the 1,000.
Yeah, so let's say the city's at 500. He gets to the city. Now the city in its entirety, even if the city is like 2,000 cubits wide or whatever.
No, if it's beyond
Oh, it's beyond. It's
if it ends the city
before the boundary,
before the 1,000,
before the 1,000,
then it's considered 4 cubits.
So then,
after the 1,000, then
Yeah.
he can only go to the 1,000.
Okay, but so if the entire city falls within that 1,000 from his new dwelling, then the city in its entirety is just considered 4
cubits. And then at the end of the city, he can go 996 because he went 4.
Yeah.
And he can only go 1,000. Remember,
Yeah.
because from his reference point is the 1,000 outside of the city.
Yeah, exactly. This
Okay.
is Jewish math right here.
Oh, this is this is called new math. Yeah. According to this principle, if a person places an area of 2,000 cubits eastward of his house in a city, he would lose the possibility of walking throughout the entire area of the city to the west. So he couldn't walk west.
Yeah.
Right? Thus, he would be permitted to walk 2,000 cubits from his house to his Eru, and from the Eru of 2,000 cubits further. He may not walk even 1 cubit to the west of his house in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When a person places his Erev in a private domain, even if it's a metropolis like Nineveh, the ruins of a city, right, or a cave that is fit used as a dwelling, is permitted to walk throughout the entire area of the 2,000 cubits beyond in all directions. So here, this is his town. He went, let's say, 1,000, right?
Yeah.
And he went to a big metropolis.
Mhm.
And in that metropolis, he placed his food in a private domain.
Yeah.
That's his dwelling. Well, that whole city now becomes, he can walk the entire city. So it's a huge metropolis like Nineveh.
Yeah.
So he can go 10,000 this direction to the city limits and then walk 2.
So when his Arab is located in a different city, then the principle is different. Like
if it's in the private domain of a city,
yeah,
right? So then it's like, well, it's just like
if you're living there.
and like you're living in
Yeah.
in your own city, you could go to the ends of the city limits and go 2,000 anyway. Now that city becomes where you can.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the idea.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah. 5. If a person deposits his Erev within the city in which he is spending Shabbos, his actions are of no consequence. And his Shabbos limits should not be measured from his Erev.
So he's just like a regular person.
Yeah, instead, he is like the other inhabitants of the city, compared to 2,000 cubits in all directions outside of the city. If a person deposits an Erev in outlying areas that are included within the city's boundaries, and the calculation of city Sabbath limits begins beyond these boundaries, it is as if he deposited within the city proper. Okay. If a person deposits his Erev beyond the city's Shabbos limits is not considered to be a valid Eruv, right? Because it's beyond the 2,000 of that city.
But he could still, from that place between the cities, go 2,000 into.
No, because that Eruv is nothing. So he can only go up from where he is, where he was Friday night, 2,000 from that town or city.
But I thought the whole point of him making his Eruv in like some other place outside.
Yeah, but
the
he
city-
did it out. He did it outside the Shabbos limits. He can't reach there, so it's an invalid Eruv. It's invalid the Eruv. You have to make a valid Eruv.
I see. Okay, because this is if the Eruv. Let's say he tried to make.
Here,
an Eruv.
I'm in Montreal, and I went outside of I went to the Eastern Townships, and I placed it 2,000 beyond. I mean, let's assume that I can,
Yeah.
right? Whatever. I'm just giving names, right?
Yeah.
And I placed it though 2,000 beyond the Eastern Townships, and I came back here, and I was going to walk there.
You can't because it's beyond the 2,000 from Montreal.
Not because of that. Forget about it. Let's say it's not. I get XY, call it XY. I gave those names, but it's not beyond.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're right. Then the whole thing doesn't begin,
Yeah.
right? So I could go to the next metropolis, right? It's within 2,000.
Yeah.
But I placed my my stuff 2,000 beyond that one. I can't reach that one.
Mhm.
So therefore, it's invalid,
Mhm.
right? I can only go 2,000 from my city.
But I thought that your city in this case is your Eruv, like it's where.
Yeah, but I placed in a place I can get to. It has to be a place you can get to. Am I allowed to walk? I can walk to that city, but can I walk beyond 2,000 amas of that city?
No, because that's not your city.
No, even if it was my city, I couldn't.
No, yeah,
Even if it was my city, I can't. I can't walk beyond 2,000 if it's my city. If I place it beyond 2,000, I have to place it within 2,000.
yeah, you're temporary. You're
Right, but if I place it beyond 2,000, so then it's invalid.
Yeah, because you can't walk 2,000 amos to get to it.
Right, it
But
has to
isn't
be
that the
within the
whole-
2,000 that you placed it. But he didn't place it within 2,000. Look, if a person deposits the Eruv beyond the city's Shabbos limits, beyond the 2,000, so it's not considered a valid Eruv. That's the point. Okay.
Isn't like isn't this what we established at the beginning of this whole thing?
No, but you have to do it within 2,000 though.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is beyond the Shabbos limits. Means beyond 2,000.
Yeah, so but like this principle is what we first established.
No, but it's only if we never spoke about beyond 2,000. If I'm taking food and I'm going beyond Montreal beyond 2,000,
Yeah. Your
then that's
premise
invalid.
Doesn't work.
That's invalid. If I place it within 2,000,
Mhm.
then from that point,
You can-
I have 2,000.
Okay.
That's what
That's
we're
all it's
talking about.
saying.
Yeah, but that's not what it said here. Here it's saying it's beyond the Shabbos limits that I said it. That's invalid.
Shabbos limits meaning
I
2,000.
mean, 2,000. Yeah. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos limits means 2,000.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the end of the city, because at the end of the city, it's not the limit. The limit is 2,000 beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
number 6, an Eruv Tchumim should be established only for the purposes associated with the mitzvah. A person who desires to go to the house of a mourner, to a wedding feast, to greet his teacher, or to greet a colleague returning from a journey, or the like. Similarly, one may establish an Eruv Tchumim out of fear, a person who seeks to fear non-Jews from thieves, or the like, right? In other words, you're fearful. If a person establishes an Eruv for such reason, his Eruv is still valid, even though it's not for a mitzvah.
But the Eruv doesn't even apply, for instance, if you fear a non-Jew and the non-Jew's coming to like kill you. For
No, he
instance.
didn't say killing. Then you can do anything.
Yeah,
And you've been killed, and then all the laws of Shabbos,
yeah.
you can go do a malacha.
Yeah.
Go ride your horse.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
go
so
ride your
if-
horse.
if-
We're talking about you just have fear that he's coming to make trouble,
Okay.
right? No, to kill you or to do right. That's a different story entirely. Number 7. All foods that may be used for shituv.
It's the food you're dropping off.
Shituv means the food, right? For shituv means the
2 meals.
no, shituv means the coming together, the joining,
Like the joint.
the joining together, right? No, no, this is shituv is no. If you're living in the courtyard with people, so you take from people food.
Yeah.
That's shituv,
Okay.
right? It's a
Like a shared area.
shared, yeah, shituv means shared. No, shared food. All the foods that can be used for the shared foods in a courtyard may also be used for Eruv Tanchumim. Remember, they're not all foods you can use, right?
Mhm.
Right? There were certain foods that we spoke about.
Okay.
So those are the foods. So it's the same, similar foods. That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Right. Erev Chatzeris actually. Oh, Shituf is like Shituf. You can't use water, salt, mushrooms. Erev Chatzeris actually can only use bread. With the courtyard one, Shituf is not for the courtyard. Shituf is for the lane that you share a lane that goes into a public domain, like lane in the back of your homes. Sometimes you have, and if it goes into a public domain. Okay, so what is min measure food acceptable for Erev Tchumim? The amount of food sufficient for 2 meals for every individual. When the food is in question is a side dish, the minimum measure is the amount sufficient to accompany 2 meals. It's governed by the same laws of Shitu.
So let's say you're 2 people and you're trying to use this place as your base so you can extend. Then you would need 4 meals.
Yeah, so it seems. Yeah. Yeah, every person is going to be using it, 2 meals. Why 2 meals? Because there's 3 meals on Shabbos. The Friday night you already had. There's 2 more meals for Shabbos. So this becomes your set home, so to speak,
So
for
you
the
have
2
to,
meals of
maybe
Shabbos.
this is preemptive, but you have to eat like Shabbos lunch there.
No, it has to be that potentially you would eat
That
it.
you
It's
could.
there that if you need it.
Okay.
I don't think it means you have to, if I recall.
Okay.
Right. Number 8, it is necessary for the place where a person intends to spend Shabbos and the Erev to be in the same domain, so that it's possible to partake of it ben Hashmaishes. Therefore, if a person intends to spend Shabbos in the public domain and places Erev in a private domain, or if he intends to spend the Shabbos in a private domain, he places the Erev in a public domain, the Erev is not valid. It's impossible to transfer articles from a private domain to public domain without performing transgression. Aha. So if I plan to be on Shabbos in a private domain, but I left my Eruv outside of the city limits, right, in a public place, the food has to be a place where I could eat it, where I plan to be, right? So if I plan to be in a private domain, the food needs to be put in a private domain. If I'm going to be in a public domain, it has to be in a public domain. In other words, if I'm going to someone's home, it's a private domain. So I need to leave it where I'm in my place, a private domain. And because when Shabbos enters, it has to be in a place where I would be able to eat it if I were there now doing what I was going to do there. So if I'm going to a mourner's home, right?
That's
That's a
private.
private domain. So therefore, that's where I'm going to spend Shabbos. So therefore, I need to put it in a private domain.
The food in the private
And
domain.
the food, not in the mourner's home,
No, but in the middle.
but wherever I put it in that forthcoming village, city, or whatever, has to be in a private domain because that's where I'm going to spend Shabbos. It has to be a similar domain where I'm going to spend my time Shabbos day.
We're
Okay?
talking about the food that's like
The food that you placed there before Shabbos.
But it might not even be in a city.
Doesn't mean, well, it doesn't mean.
No,
It could
no,
be a
no,
private domain. It could be a home,
Yeah,
a farmer.
yeah.
It could be in a farmer's home on the way to the next
let's say I
town.
want to greet my teacher who's going to be walking through the village town square, which is a public domain. Then I have to leave my food in the intermediate area in a public place, like in a field, for instance. But
Yeah.
if I'm going into a mourner's house,
Then I
then
have
I have
to,
to like find some private place
Right.
to leave it in.
Exactly. Number 9. If, however, the person intends to spend Shabbos in a private domain or in a public domain, and he places his Erev in a Carmelis. Carmelis is a rabbinic, right? That was really a private domain that kind of made it public domain, right? Or he intends to spend Shabbos in a Carmelis, and he is Erev in a private domain or in a public domain. The Erev is acceptable. Right. During Banish Moshe, the time of the Erev was established, it is permitted to transfer articles of either of these domains, Carmelis, for the sake of a mitzvah. Why? Because so there's a geder and halacha, which means that's a parameter in law that when Banish Moshe is twilight time, right, from sunset to nightfall, 3 stars, 3 medium stars. That's a twilight time. Is it called day? Is it called night? So we take for Shabbos, because it's a biblical law, we take on both sides of Friday and Saturday, that we take it in a stringent way and we make it part of Shabbos. But it's questionable time period. Is it really Shabbos or not Shabbos? Right? So biblically, it can only be one or the other. Right? Either it is or it's not. So Friday, if I took it at sunset, that means it's going to be over sunset the next day. Rabbinically, we extend Shabbos as more than 24 hours as a result, right? It's more like 25 hours because we take in the twilight time, but that's rabbinic law. Okay. So over here, so what establishes what something is on Shabbos is when Shabbos enters. Right? So when Shabbos, and in other words, if the reality of it's changed after Banish Moshe in that twilight time, irrelevant. What it was in that twilight time is what is koiveya, is what sets it throughout Shabbos. So over here, so now, as a result, since this is rabbinic law, the whole thing, and it's rabbinic law Banish Moshe, right? So therefore, if you placed your food in a private domain, right, and yet you're going to be in a Carmelis on Shabbos, that's okay. Because that time period, for the sake of a mitzvah, you could take from a private domain and bring it to a Carmelis, and vice versa, because it's only rabbinic law. And since the time period is only rabbinic, therefore they allowed that for the sake of a mitzvah. So, for example, for example, let's say we found tefillin after Shkia, sunset, but before nightfall, Friday night. It was outside over here. What is the outside of Chabad? What's the
Public domain?
the
Street?
how's it a public domain?
Does anyone can go in it?
No, that's not halachically. It's not a public domain because it needs passage of 600,000 people, right? Halavai, we had that, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's what's biblically public domain. So what is it called? A Carmelis.
It's rabbinically.
It's called the Carmelis. It's a rabbinic, right? And that Carmelis is considered like public, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's rabbinically public, which is called the Carmelis. We don't call it public domain because that's biblical, right? So I can't carry from there on Shabbos, but if there was a pair of tefillin there and it was sunset, I could, because it's a mitzvah to save that tefillin. So I could carry it. If it was Shabbos day, I couldn't carry it. Then we had those laws. You have to put it on you, and then go 4 amas or go 4 amas each, to do whole things that you could do. But if it was between Banish Moshe, then I could, because that's a rabbinic time period, right? That's called Shabbos, and the outside is not biblical, public domain, it's rabbinic. So I could carry then the tefillin from there for the mitzvah. Could I carry a pen from there at that time? No,
No.
because the rabbis didn't allow that because that's not for the sake of a mitzvah. Got it? So the same thing is over here. That's the point.
So this is connecting a carmelite in terms of time with a carmelite in terms of, because a carmelite's place, right? Like a carmelite is a rabbinic thing where it's saying like you can't go beyond this.
Or no, you can't carry there.
You can't carry here.
It's like a public, we call it, it's the
Which is
rabbinic
not
public.
is it 4 amos or is it
Oh yeah, 4
4
amos.
amos? But biblically, it's
Or take from there and bring it in here. That's from public to private.
that's a
Right,
carmelite.
but it's a carmelist to a private.
Okay.
You can't do that rabbinically.
But this is saying, is this saying like if you find like if you place something in a. This is talking about connecting the concept of time to a concept of place.
Right.
So it's saying that if, like, in the example you just
Well,
gave,
both of them are rabbinic. That's the point over here. So since they're both rabbinic, that's why you could take the tefillin from there. The same rabbi said that you can't take the pen from there. The same rabbi said for the sake of a mitzvah, you could bring the tefillin from on there after Shkia before nightfall, right? So a half-hour time period approximately, right?
so I think I think
Okay, now over here, that the point over here is that if I put my food in a Carmelis,
yeah,
right,
on the street.
on the street over here,
Yeah.
right? I found a place, I put
Yeah.
a little box there, I
Yeah.
put my food over there in a box, right? I even locked it up,
Yeah,
right? So I know it's safe and sound, and right, so from 2000 from there, I could walk, right? Got it? But what if I'm going to a private home? I put in a Carmelis, I have to put in a private home. But since that is a
For a mitzvah.
since it's a rabbinic
rabbinic restriction.
restriction, right? And this
Yeah.
whole Eruv is rabbinic restriction.
Mhm.
So the rabbi said, for the sake of a mitzvah, that would be considered, right? At Benish Moshe's, when I put it at that time, that I would be, because I would be able to take that mitzvah food, if it was a
Yeah.
mitzvah, to bring it inside, right? So therefore, I'd be able to private, so then it would be okay.
Okay.
All the prohibitions ensued because of rabbinic decree were not applied by Nishmoshes in situation involving mitzvah or in case of urgent need. Okay, with that, we're going to conclude over here today.
So
I hope you got that, folks. You got it?
Thank you.
Amazing.
yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But what's the biblical prohibition of carrying or of walking beyond the city limits? It's more than 2,000.
That's what we said. We said it was 12,
What's the
12 kilometers.
What's the exact
Mhm.
like you're saying 12 kilometers, but it doesn't say in here like you can't go 12 kilometers. It has
Okay, but now we're talking about halacha. So halacha is it's 2,000 amas. That's rabbinic.
okay, so
It's irrelevant what the biblical
Okay.
law is
it's a lot.
because that's much more. We're
Yeah.
speaking halacha. So halacha is rabbinic law.
Okay, so it doesn't got it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
But it only matters because, as in this instance over here, since it's a rabbinic law
Yeah,
and the Carmelis is a rabbinic law,
yeah.
so therefore, if it was Benish Moshe and it was for the sake of a mitzvah, you could take something from there and bring it into the private domain, right? Because
Yeah.
so therefore, it wouldn't be a
From the
problem,
Carmelite to the private domain.
right?
Or the Carmelite to a public domain,
Right.
as long as it's for a mitzvah and it's
Only Benish Moshe.
finished between the,
Twilight.
okay. Thank you very much. My brain is
Your brain is fried.